name is Banana Shekupe. I am an artist and from the creative sector. And I also want to generalize this question of my input. My input is about, I love what I do. For the artist, for the creative, we do what we love. But now when we are doing what we love, as citizens, also we need help from the national budget to sustain so that we can do what we love as citizens of this country. Because we don't want to go and get job and people force us to do what we don't like to do. Because we have also to look at that part where people do what they love to do. And how do you sustain them to do what they like to do or they love what to do? Because we have our own environment where we practice our creative process, which we also contribute to the society or we contribute to the world. Most of the time, people, they don't talk about us. Even the government, they don't talk about the creatives. Even our line ministry, where we are put, they more focus on education than on the creatives. Even if you see them on newspapers or on TV, they are only building schools. They are not building studios and build where artists can also create their things. We don't have an office in Namibia. As artists, we don't have a place where we can come together and talk about our creativity. But people, they use our music in their cars, they use our music on their TV and all that. They are robbing us. Actually, they should be arrested. So we need police. Police only collect other things, but they don't collect when people are robbing the creatives. So, now the other thing I want to say is the national fund. Where does this fund come from? Where is the budget come from for annual budget of this country? Is it just coming from heaven or is it coming from somewhere? Because we don't know where this fund comes. Where do they collect this money to put together for the nation? Does it come from our national resources? And which national resources fund this fund? And how much also come from all the mines, the fish, everything we have? That is ours, God has given us. It's not for the other countries. The other countries are protecting their national resources. Look what Russia is doing. They are controlling their country resources. We are not controlling our resources. People just come and take and go. So something must come out of these discussions, please, so that we can get the direction. Also the decision who decide how much we must get. Can we also have input as citizens in the last decision of how much can go to the citizen of this country? Thank you.
Everyone, I'm Jason Hailonga. I'm from the financial sector that the Honorable Minister didn't expect to find. So just a few points, Honorable Minister, that some have sort of raised them in the past. We sort of just following up on, and the two main ones is the issue of restructuring CMAS and also trimming the public service wage bill, which the Honorable Minister also, when you joined your portfolio, sort of highlighted those items, and I think some work perhaps is happening in the background, but maybe more of an update how, where we are with those two items, because they were quite high on the priority list a few years ago. And then it's the issue of governance and restructuring the SOEs, and also, and that restructuring, involving things such as partly privatizing or listing some of the SOEs. We did list MTC now, just over 2 years ago. And I'm sure there are good lessons from that. So we perhaps need to identify the next candidates for listing, and just a general restructuring of SOEs, because we all read in the newspaper that the Minister of Public Enterprises is struggling to attract individuals to serve on boards, or people are rather shying away to serve on boards of public enterprises, and it's not a good trend for a country. So we, so just want to hear your view on, sort of a reform or to restructure, so that we can improve governance on that front. And I think for now, those are the few points.
My name is Junior Kenjem. I'm from the informal sector. My question to the Honorable Minister is this. I'm thankful that you have met with the Minister of Education, and you have identified that the problem within the Minister of Education is not only money, but other things that are involved. That's why we see a situation where we have graduate teachers applying to be ADF soldiers. So obviously there's something that is supposed to happen in the Ministry of Education that is not happening right now. But now, my question is, 28% of the budget goes to the Ministry of Education, and that's just mainly for salaries, teachers, etc. whatnot. I'm yet to find out how much goes to the structures, the buildings, and the equipment that are in the schools and etc. I'll leave it there. My other question is, Honorable Minister, I have seen that the ministry has been paying detailed attention to charcoal production. You have been working closely to ensure that young people are invested in that field. But apart from that, we have unemployment rate that is over 60%. That is a crisis. It warrants an emergency. There has to be a state of emergency for unemployment. What is so difficult for the Ministry of Finance to declare a budget in all the ministries? Ministry of Health, there has to be a youth budget there. Ministry of Education, there has to be a youth budget there. Ministry of Mines, there has to be a budget there. We saw young people being chosen for the green hydrogen. We don't even know how the Office of the Presidency chose those individuals that are currently being funded for the youth for the green hydrogen. Maybe Honorable Kanjode can maybe answer that part. But my plea is this: let's just have a youth budget for all the ministries. It will solve this issue, because things are not normal in this country anymore. As I said, we have graduate teachers, people with degrees that are planning to be soldiers. Yes. I don't know if that is normal or not, but I'm speaking from a student perspective. Let's have a youth budget for all the ministries. I think that will contribute. It will maybe decrease, it will reduce a few of the unemployment that we currently have. Please, Honorable Minister, that's my submission. Thank you.
My name is Nafumane Hamukoshi. I am representing a lot of organizations, including the Basic Income Trend Coalition, Comrades Association as the Executive Director, and the first year student at the University of Namibia, and also the Economic and Social Justice Trust. So I have two questions that I'm posing to the Honorable. How can we address the various problems related to early child development, such as lack of access to education and malnutrition if we do not prioritize and invest in initiatives like the basic income grant. Despite numerous studies, including the one conducted by Namibia, highlighting the benefits of implementing BIG, which was the first one worldwide, it seems that
Can you go a little bit slowly so we can take down the question? Yeah.
how can we address the various problems related to early child development, such as lack of access to education and malnutrition, if we do not prioritize and invest in initiatives like the basic income grant? Despite numerous studies, including one conducted by Namibia, which was the first worldwide, highlighting the benefits of implementing BIG, it seems that political will rather than affordability or feasibility is hindering its implementation. Isn't it astonishing that such a powerful tool for empowerment is being overlooked due to political reasons rather than affordability? My second question is, from the previous meeting, has the discussions or the points that were made by the civil society organizations, did this become a tick box exercise to get international rating for consulting the people?
Nation is especially committed to combating malnutrition. As we discussed the midterm budget review, I asked the Ministry of Finance and the National Planning Commission to consider the critical issue of malnutrition in our nation. Malnutrition poses a great threat to the physical and cognitive development of our children, impacting their future potential. So we request an allocation of funds towards comprehensive nutritional programs, including awareness campaigns, nutritious school meals, and support for vulnerable families, because the one we are currently is not enough. So I understand that every ministry has people they send to go into communities for them to see what the people are going through. Can we advise so that our ministers, deputy ministers, go into the communities themselves? Because as I stand here, my body is even shaking, and I'm actually acknowledging and even saying thank you that I have an opportunity right now to stand in front of you to tell you that in Katutura, I'm from Windhoek West, but in Katutura, Okuriangava, Havana, there's kids that go to sleep with no food. And I'm saying it because I've seen it myself. The reason why I started my organization is because I failed a child that I was supposed to assist but could not. And that child died. That was the first time I heard about malnutrition. I told the mother to call me and I will assist her. And 2 days later she called me and then she told me that her child died. But the unfortunate thing is, Namibia has so much resources. But as a 22-year-old student, I take money from my pockets. I go sell in Katutura for me to be able to feed children in those locations. While we have people that are high tables. And I'm not going to blame anyone because I understand you have your administrators that are doing certain things, especially groundwork. But kindly please go there for yourself. See for yourself. So that you see a small child with so many sores because it's not clean. The area they're in is not clean. So that you can see a 3-year-old child looking at me and crying because she's eating food and she's not used of eating food. I'm begging you, I'm so sorry, my body is actually shaking. And then you see what these kids are going through. These are the kids, we see that they are our future leaders of tomorrow. But why are we neglecting them? I have to work hard. I don't have any job, but I have to feed these kids. You can go on our social media page. We feed these kids. We give food to organizations. She also is part of certain organizations that feed children in Katutura. But those parents are some of our parents that are voters. They actually voted thinking that they are going to see certain change, but their kids are suffering. A child is not going to school because there is no pets. Okay, there's zero rate on pets. But what about someone that does not have $12 or $15 to afford that pet? What happens to them?
Thank
And
you
another
so
thing,
much.
no,
Let's
sorry.
allow others.
Yes, just
Yeah.
the last thing.
Yeah.
Again, that I wanted to talk about someone that spoke about education. In my country, in Namibia, we have more universities and less industries. What are you doing about that? Because you go to school, you pay your education, and then in the end of the day, you don't even get a job because there's no enough industries. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. I am representing Business Today NBC News, and I just want to also ask something, Mr. Graham. Yeah? In the discussions that we've had, or that you've had with the civil societies, has a business approach come to a point where you decided to have a conversation around industries that we can start? Currently, right now, the discussion that is widely on everybody's mouth is the oil that has been discovered. And Namibia has a lot of resources, and we've seen many towns, when we look at Arandes, when we look at Oranjemund, and so on, we've seen many towns that have had resources that have been mined and that are left ghost towns after these resources have depleted. So where is the discussion of identifying and also starting subsequent industries within towns that can be developed, such as Oranjemund, Arandes, and so on? Are we going to have a discussion like that? Or because when we look at it, resources are just resources. Those resources can run out. Are we going to have that discussion to have subsequent industries that will develop those towns, to maintain those towns when people leave or when that mining industry does run out? That's basically all I wanted to say in terms of that. Oh, secondly, are we gonna, in the instance of that subsequent industries, are we gonna have the discussion around long-term sustainable industries that can sustain those towns if those resources do run out? Oh, Mr. Graham, we talked about the Local Content Act the last time we spoke. We also got to strengthen that act. An honorable minister can probably look into that and speak to the cabinet about that. Are we going to strengthen the Local Content Act for it to actually exist in the industries that need to exist and be an act that is implemented throughout? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's really priceless. And my name is Eben Atupunda. I am representing here the Namibia Federation of Persons with Disability, and the subsidiary or organizations that fall under, which are all organizations of persons with disability, most of them. So I just want to raise disability is a cross-cutting issue. And much of the issues that were raised there by the Master Ceremony applies to us. But I just wanted to also alert you to disability funding in general. I feel for the past few years it has been dwindling and going down, especially in the two areas where we see disability funding really coming, which is the National Disability Council and the Disability Department under the Ministry of Gender, which I believe improvement could be done. For example, Disability Council is how the country is supposed to be held accountable, or the government is supposed to be held accountable for disability, or in making sure the persons with disabilities are catered for. But a disability council is underfunded, understaffed. They are not able to really do the work like they're supposed to. And also the issue with the disability, the department under the Deputy Minister of Disability Affairs, with the uncertainty that is in, is it a political position? Is it, will we have a ministry at the end of the day? I know some of these issues have political implications, but we are seeing a ray of light, especially with disability, through that department, but which seems like it could also disappear easily with a political decision. Thank you so much.
My name is Florian Marembo, a member of Shetland Federation of Namibia. Okay, as young people in this country, we are constantly faced with high unemployment, which we believe some of us that it's being crafted by our own government. Our government is so concerned with getting every young person a degree from UNAM, NAS, and IUM, but they are neglecting the vocational training. Little do we know that us that are graduates from NAS and UNAM, we are coming with a skill. And we are being taught theory. We are graduating with theory. But the guys at BTC, these are the colleagues that are graduating with a skill. Little do we know that we as graduates from university are incorporated into the guys that are graduating from the VTC. So the VTC colleagues, these are the guys that are building the economy, and we as graduates from NAS, UNAM and IUM are waiting for this community, for this country. So I would like to pose a question to the Honorable Minister. How much is really given to the VTC? Because I visited the area of Kamangos. We have what they call trainees. We call ourselves students. They call themselves trainees at the vocational trainings. So we have a lot of trainees that are dropping out of their vocational institutions due to lack of funding. But while we have students at the UNAM and NAS that are getting non-tuition fee, which is 17,000, 21,000, which would get at least for 5 trainees to be in that vocational training and get a skill. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Marcus, for facilitating this discussion, and to those that have taken the floor. As I have said before, we have come to listen, so my colleagues, starting with the DP here, may have to come in at the later stage to address some of the questions that we have raised. And we appreciate all these questions. And so where we are able to do justice to them, we will. Where we don't have the information, we will find the information and provide the information to the Secretariat. I believe so there was a question on the artist. I think Mr. Shikupe, yes, you have demonstrated or have pointed out that it's important that we harvest the creativity of the creative people. I think that's something that we agree with, and it's one of the sectors that we are looking at as government as part of the diversification strategy is really to try and see how can we create content in Namibia that is going to that we can sell outside, and therefore our creative people how can they be assisted to exploit these opportunities, because we believe that we are uniquely positioned as a country to create some more creative material that can be sold outside, be in a form of film or be in other ways. So that's one focus area, and I believe we have some work to do there, so we have to work together with the creative people. But I think your question really is about how, do we get enough money from our mineral resources and natural resources? I think that's a question that we should all debate. What is enough or what is not enough? And come to a conclusion whether what we are getting from mines, for instance, can we get more? Probably we can still get more. So that's something that we should continue to revisit as we engage the investors that come to Namibia. For instance, let me take just give you one example, because it's important that we should also have a context to this discussion. So some time ago, I was part of the team that was doing a study on how much Namibia gets from the diamond sector. That's about maybe 10 years ago. If you add up the whole cake, Namibia was getting close to about 70% of that whole cake for the retirement sector. The question is that enough or that is not enough? So, but I'm going to leave that to you to see whether it's enough, that is not enough or that is enough. Bearing in mind also that, you know, when you are when you have people who have capital and know-how investing in your country, they also need to get some benefits from that cake. So is it 29% enough? Because we are also competing with others. Or maybe we can get the whole 90% and they can only be left with 10%. But you are in a competitive space where others also have the resources that you have. In fact, some have made better resources than you. I always get amazed by Namibians who believe that, apart from the oil that we still have to harvest one day, and that is still be improved. Because we believe that we have got so much resources. Yeah. So we don't realize that when it comes to mining, for instance, the kind of deposits we have, first of all, very small. Secondly, quality is not one of the best. If I take gold, for instance, it's important that we put these things into perspective. We used to produce about 2 tons of gold a year, compared to others who are like South Africa who are producing. During their peak days, I think they were producing more than 120 million tons of gold. So we need to put these things into perspective. If I look at copper, we no longer have copper. We had that mine that closed down I believe about 5 or 7 years ago. The 2D one, it had a lifespan of about 5 years. But the deposit, yes, it was good, but it was not very significant. We have significant uranium resource. I think that we should acknowledge. Yeah, can we get more from uranium? Probably yes, but it's also not the best quality. So it's important that Namibians understand this, because sometimes we have this illusion that we have so much. Yeah. So and then we can get so much. So it's important to understand these things, and the young people are wanting to do proper research, so that you can also educate us and your fellow students about this kind of resource that the country has. Yes, I think the question is good. It's important. We have some resources, we have some fishing resources. We must start to ask these critical questions. Are we getting enough from our fish? Are we getting enough from our diamonds? But it must be research. It must be informed by research. It mustn't just be informed by emotions. So we must do proper research, and maybe the civil society can help us do this kind of research to see what's a reasonable amount of money that we can derive from the resources that we have. Bearing in mind that those that we invite to come and help us to exploit these resources also need to get a share of the cake. Let me move on to the next one. I think Jason or SEMAS, that's something it's taking up a lot of resources from government, and that's something that we are still continuing to try and see what's the best way of generating some savings from there. We have done the assessment. We have identified some areas where possible savings can be found, but unfortunately, this is not something that government can just decide unilaterally. This is where we need to cut. Unfortunately, we have to negotiate with the union. That conversation is not an easy one. So, but the reform is going on, but it's a bit slow because we will have to convince our other stakeholders that this is where we need to make some savings. But it's continuing. The difficult one is the wage bill. Again, this is also something that together with SEMAS, that is managed by the Prime Minister's office. They have done some assessment as to where areas can where we can make some savings. The conclusion was not very strong, so that's something that still has to be, that assessment still has to continue to see how best to achieve that objective of reducing the wage rate. But I think there has been some small wins in the sense that the government has not really been having more people. The policy of what is called compensatory recruitment, I believe is helping us in a way that the numbers have gone down slightly. In the sense that if you want to create a new position, you have to give up a new one. But we need more than that. The restructuring of SOEs, again, we are continuing with the strengthening of our SOEs. We're not moving as fast as we want, because again, there are many other stakeholders that are involved. We are strengthening the compliance of SOEs, make sure that they comply with or they submit their business plans, they are approved, the financial statements, and this is a challenge for many SOEs. They don't submit their financial statements on time. The law is that 6 months after the end of the financial year, they have to submit financial statements. So there is some slowness in this process, and that's something we are managing, and we are reminding them that it's important that you know what is happening in your organizations, and therefore you can only know what is happening in your organizations if you have proper financial statements that are audited and are published by the board and the shareholders. So it's improving slowly, but we have to do more work. We have been crafting what is called the ownership policy. You may have heard us talking about this, especially during the budget, the tabling of the budget. So this is a policy that we have now more or less finalized. It has been presented to cabinet. So the next stage is to consult the key stakeholders, and I believe the civil society will also then be consulted. What is and what is in the ownership policy is really to say, why should government own public enterprises? And therefore, what's the objective? And how should we own it? So how do we manage it if we own public enterprises? So I think that once we have agreed on that policy framework, we then start to ask the question: does this fit in the framework, or do we have some SOEs that do not fit in the ownership framework? So then we can start to do further restructuring. Then there was a question from the gentleman from the informal sector who was asking very formal questions. Is he still there? Oh, he's behind. Very good, very good, very good. Yes, you are correct to say that Namibia spends quite a lot of money on education. In fact, if you look at the kind of money that we spend on education as a percentage of the country's total income, it's very, very, very high. We're spending close to 9% of GDP. Others are spending close to about 4% of GDP on education. But a significant part of that goes, yes, right, goes to administration, goes to salaries. So I think it talks about a number of things. One, we cannot continue to put a lot more money into education, because what we are putting in already, it's quite high compared to our peers. We are probably in the top 5 when it comes to education spending in the world, not in Africa, in the world. So the question we have to start asking ourselves is, where do we generate savings so that we can redirect some of the money that we are spending on salaries on other things, including materials, including the training of teachers, So that's a question we have to ask ourselves. Well, where do we have inefficiencies in the system? And this cuts across all our social sector, health, education. Compared to our peers, we are spending a whole lot on these sectors. So the question I want us to debate, including the civil society, is that where do we find savings so that we can redeploy these savings still in the education sector, but now going to the other areas that need support? I think that's a question we have to ask ourselves. We know there's a backlog, for instance, when it comes to infrastructure for early childhood development. Minister of Education has to take over these programs from the Minister of Gender, but infrastructure is an issue. So we'll probably have to give them a bit more money now to build more classrooms. But I think going forward, the question we have to ask ourselves is really, how do we gain more savings within this sector so that we can also prop up the other areas of education and health that need resources? You were asking about the youth budget. Well, I think it's not that Namibia doesn't spend enough on the youth. When we say 28% of the budget goes to education, this is youth. This is youth. So it's not only what it goes to the Minister of Youth. So a number of things that we do is actually for the youth. But you seem to be saying that government must have a specific budget line for youth employment. Well, what is important, I think, is to understand that government cannot create employment. So government has to create a conducive environment for the private sector to create employment. Because that's the only sustainable way. Because government funding comes from the private sector. So if you don't have the private sector, you will not have resources to fund government expenses. So that's how we need to understand it. So but it's important that government spends money on training people so that we have a productive workforce that is able to work in the private sector so that you can create more wealth and create more access for government to help with the provision of social services and other public goods that government have to support, including roads and other kind of infrastructure. So yes, unemployment is a serious social problem. We have to tackle it, but we have to tackle it by strengthening the economy, diversifying the economy, attracting more economic or creating more economic activity so that we can reduce the unemployment rate. It's not an easy thing. It needs all of us to work together. Yes, government has to play its part, but all of us really need to work together. I think the issue of graduate teachers applying to become members of the defense force, I think there's a coordination problem there in my view. So you can train more teachers, but you only need a number of teachers in the country. So and unfortunately, there are only few employers, and the biggest one is government. So I think the question we need to ask ourselves: the number of teachers are we training? Are we training and are we creating an oversupply of teachers? And if that is the case, how do we make sure that we reduce the number of people that we are training? Because there's only one employer, and the one employer will have enough teachers at one point. In fact, at this point, we are more or less. I think we probably have reached that saturation point. Because there are so many institutions that are now training teachers. Do we need to train more teachers? Maybe the question is not more, and not yes. So I think that we need to look at that part. Because if we overtrain people that we are not able to employ, we actually we are wasting resources. So I think, yes, I agree with you, there's a need for coordination. How many people do we need to train? But it means that conversation is a conversation between government, it's a conversation between the Council of Higher Education, it's a conversation between institution of higher learning. Those are the people who are admitting these people. Yeah, it's the same for nurses. How many nurses do we have to train per year? So in my view, it looks like we actually training more nurses than what we can absorb. So that needs to be coordinated. Yeah, the chief planner is here. it's going to help us to maybe bring all those stakeholders together to coordinate the problem. Then there was a question from my sister. They was asking about the basic income grant. I believe Graham has talked about what the government has implemented now. That the food bank has been converted into what is called the conditional basic income grant. I think the jury is still out. I think this is a debate. The jury is still out whether. So I think that debate is there. I would want somebody who can convince me that that's what we need, because there are concerns that it may have pros and cons. And unfortunately, I haven't seen any country that have implemented fully yet. So I want to be taken to that country so that I can learn from that country. So I think the intentions are good. How you're going to do it, I see you shaking your head. So I want you are a young person, so I want you to do proper research and come and convince me with facts.
We've done the research.
Yeah, with facts. So let's have that debate, and then let's convince each other that yes, this is what is going to work, because I think that debate is still not included. You have talked about we are only here for TCOPs. I think our time is very limited, so we are very stretched. So if we don't think this was going to be a productive discussion, we would not have come here already. Because I will speak for myself. Most of the time I'm waiting, and therefore the reason why I'm here is because I believe that this conversation is very, very important. Otherwise, I will not have wasted our time. So we are here, as we have said before, we are here to listen, and those ideas that we can implement, we will definitely implement that. But we also need to understand that there are competing needs that we will have to look at. It's not only, we're not only going to look at the list that is going to come from here, we're going to come to look at the list that is coming from other people. The other lady who is doing a wonderful job in Kalatura, so we applaud you for what you're doing there. And I want to understand where the failure is, because I think if you look at government has got problems for almost every part of the person. Yeah. So the pensioners, there's a pension scheme. For orphans, there's a scheme for OBC. There's also a scheme for poor families, and you used to work on this agenda. For poor families who got children going to school, who get support from government. So if there are people who are falling through the cracks, it's probably an implementation problem, and it's probably also maybe the system is not capturing it. But I think in terms of the programs are there, and maybe the issue is where are people falling into cracks, and maybe that's what we need to hear. It's not the lack of programs. So I think we want to hear why are these programs not working? Because government has tried to create programs that are actually supporting vulnerable people. So you need to help us to understand why are they not being caught by this net. I want to hear more from you. Maybe during the break, you can come to me so that you can tell me where are we losing these people? Because we need to catch them with this net that has been created. I think the gentleman from NPC was asking about industries. I think I talked about industry, but we also wanted to get more clarity from Graham. So I will leave that for Graham. And the disability colleague, we hear your cry. Yes, I think the government has got specific interest in supporting people with disability in one way or another. I can't promise you that the ministry is still going to. There will still be a minister or a department. In fact, it's not even a department because you have a deputy minister that is going to be there. I'm not the appointing authority. I don't create it, but I think I can say without a fear of contradiction that yes, government definitely values that program, and it really wants to do things that support people with disability. The gentleman who talked about BTCs, yes, we can agree with you that the government needs to continue to invest in BTCs, and I don't think there's a debate there. If you see what government is building, and I'm not saying it's not enough, I mean it's enough. We are building BTCs everywhere. So we're building one in Ketmans, we're building one in Korikas, we're building one in Kurempuru. So we are upgrading the Okakarara one, and the Hobabas one is upgraded. So I don't think there's a debate there. So to say that I think the government does not realize the importance of BTC, I don't think you are being fair there. So maybe the question is this enough? I also want to understand why the BTC students in Burundi, and Burundi has got a very, very good BTC. In fact, it's one of the best in the country. I visited several times. Why those students in Burundi are not able to benefit from NASFA? Because people from who are going to BTC actually do qualify to get loans from NASFA, not just like the people who are going to UNAM and NASFA. So maybe again, it's not the fact that there's a lack of a program, it's why are they not being caught by this program? So I think that's what we need to identify. Because they get loans just like anybody else who's going to the tertiary institution that qualifies. Let me maybe the DG we want to say something.
Thank you. And I want to thank the organizers platform. And of course, the NPC's main mandate is to direct development, and therefore to deal with development partners, multilateral organizations, bilateral organizations. And part of that mandate includes the liaison activities between civil society organizations and the policy maker at the top of the NPC. In the last couple of years, NANGOF seemed to have simply fizzled out, and that continuation, unfortunately, has suffered continuation. My question I asked Melanie here was, who's the head of civil society? There is a gap. In my tenure, right up to now, and until CSO sort of fizzled out, we used to have quarterly engagements, and then no longer happens. So I'm asking myself, where is the CSO representatives? Of course, IPPR and NPC meets at platforms during budget consultations. I don't seem to remember having met outside that, and I am open, NPCs, for that purpose. We need to continue the culture. I want to start from there, and then I want to say, I want to agree in some measure that the development budget needs to be meaningful and purpose in its impact for service delivery through capital projects, jobs, facilities, service. All of these are the embodiment of what a development budget is supposed to be doing, and it is so properly attached to that line mandate. At taking up the role as the DG, I spent 3 months in the field, and I went to every region except Commerce, and didn't actually visit every constituency, but very close to that. And I wrote my own notes I can identify with some of your statements, Graham, that in part, and because of own goals between primarily the beneficiaries of these contracts in executing government projects, a lot has gone no more than window height in some of the key projects. Therefore, your characterization that we shouldn't just create white elephants, but we also have compiled a full report accounting for what has the development budget actually delivered in the last 30 years. We have that report. We're actually on the 30th celebration of Namibia's independence. We launched that report to the public. It's available. We can also, in a large measure, show you, IPPR, that much of that trajectory of capital investment has gone to benefit in the country. I acknowledge the wide elephants here and there, but by and large, the impact is in a report that you can have access to, and you can take it from there. Going forward, it still is a challenge. In the last couple of years, that the development budget's capitalization has actually gone down significantly, all on account of a weaker economy and output at GDP level. That's understandable. Yet, having said that, we continue to try and prop it up, and we continue to make it or make the stakeholder ministries who actually implement the projects. That for us to be able to be effective, these, that, and the other are the suggestions we've brought them. The field engagement have by and large delivered suggestions. And part of the effort you see the Minister of Finance is undergoing to have wider public consultations into the regions is to try and change the culture back then where a budget will be reaching the regions by the end of July. That is a direct consequence of having gone to the people and looked at that and consulted from settlement, village, region, national, which is the planning framework. That we have, we continue to work that. It's not perfect. We're not absconding from responsibility, but we continue to do that, and we continue to welcome criticism, suggestions, whichever way. That's why we at NPC have joined in this discussion. So much for that. I want to join Madam Hendrina, you said is your name, if I'm correct. I share with your pain. I am just as emotional as you are, because I have seen these things on my scouting in the regions, and especially so when years as the years and lack of rain are this profound. People go hungry. We just had that debate in cabinet. Cabinet admitted that with the drought assessment, people will be going hungry. Send out teams, look at why people are hungry. Maybe the question or the suggestion we should put forward, where in our system are people falling between the cracks, and not to find that out from you necessarily, because you may not know how the system works. So it's more ourselves at administrative level to try and interrogate where that work falls astray. I want to say that. We at the NPC have submitted or actually carried out 2 reports. Cost of hunger, and the other one is malnutrition. Food nutrition. Yeah, those were the 2 reports. The findings of which is, if you have suffered malnutrition at that level and since that age, it actually doesn't leave you. It persists with you. And it has a cost to the economy. So this is a very important point you are making. And the executive persists with this. Like I say, the cost to the economy, he has seen the figures, it's not just some child play. It is astronomical. And it is something that government, while seized with it, needs to deal with it in a manner speedily, decisive, and abating of the problem. And I want to share with you that those of us that do the research around these issues at National Planning Commission, you often gets given a pushback when you read that lack of certain foodstuffs in your daily diet actually persists with you because your body strength has never had it, and you can't actually exercise your body strength in the same manner as somebody who's been exposed to correct, appropriate foodstuffs in their intake daily. So I want to emphasize the point you are making, and I really do share in the manner you express yourself. So I have jumped the list of questions. I want to go back to my friend in the informal sector with your so characterized formal questions. You made a statement around green hydrogen and scholarships. On the 21st of this month, we will be holding a town hall. 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, in the various sectors of the capital. And we send out those invitations to members. Please come along and let us give you the full scope of what green hydrogen is about. And just as a way to show, believe you me, that government does take the industrialization and new engines of growth very, very serious. And this is on the back of having unpacked the economy between myself, Ministry of Finance, Bank of Namibia, and Ministry of Industrialization and Trade, and 8 other work streams of the totality of government representation and the private sector. And we've submitted several reports. We can spend hours and days talking to those. And they were particularly pertinent in the sense that we went to what in the setup of our economic makeup has actually kept growth in abeyance and for so long. So these reports are available to the public. You can access them and read them. So between myself and him and my colleague Minister of Finance. And this is where green hydrogen from the Harambee Prosperity Plan, that's where it came from. And the emphasis of the President back then is, this is one of the future job-creating industries. One of the industrialization policies we need to adopt because of climate change. The fact that we suffer persistent drought periods, it's because the climate is being damaged by human activity. And we, who are not the exact causal effects of green hydrogen, the carbon effect in the atmosphere, Southern Africa collectively does less than 0.5% damage or emission to the environment. If we don't take that initiative, we already suffer from drought back to back with bumper rainy seasons, floods, often in the same period as maybe drought. So we needed to take that policy initiative. So I share with you in the scholarships part of the green hydrogen. This is not government money we spend. Not that it justifies whatever the wrongs we've done. We've actually outsourced that part of the work to the private institutions with government expertise. And we policymakers were told strictly, stay away from these things so you do not become compromised. So, yes, His Excellency the President has admitted this cannot be tolerated. And therefore, we will speak to you on the findings when we have the hearings next week or the week after next. So please take along and let's talk through. At the same time, the Minister of Finance spoke about the resources envelope of the country. Yes, indeed, irrespective of the quality, the amounts, the volumes, and so on, shareholding in a majority sector, and especially where the government has no abilities, capacities to actually be at the head of these resources and mine them in a nationalized sense, does not always speak to, and I'm going to be very controversial here. You can like it, dislike it, it's my opinion. Majority shareholding is not alone and totally unequivocally held in the form of I am 51% shareholder. You may be completely just the beneficiary of the tax regime in the oil and gas business, the diamond business, and much of that, if you agglomerate the totality of the government take, it may exceed between 55 and 65%. So, yes, I'm being reminded here, and we've come here to engage in the serious sense. Time, yes, I mind that. So, majority shareholding, please do include the fact that government takes mostly the largest share of such activities. Combine that with whatever form of shareholding. Let us, in our emotive debate, consider that. Lastly, on that issue, it's a generation later after the many efforts of exploration, much of which those holes have delivered nothing else except chips of rocks and dusts. The billions are gone, until much recently when we have discovered. So, policy change has to protect the future for the longest, which we have depended on investors. That array of group of people with money that risk it down holes and up the mountains and valleys, and now the sun, the wind, and the water. And I plead, can you protect these? Not to say we cannot, but we, the government and its people, must approach the change in policy and how we go about it, considering how far we got without putting a cent and what we got, and maturely mimic examples of other important lessons in the world, just so that we don't abruptly disturb and destroy what we have. That relationship would continually play an important role going forward. It is the time, in my view, to start maturely beginning to probe that environment in lieu of change, so that the majority Namibians begin to enjoy more benefits, begin to enjoy more management, but to be abrupt, emotive, without care, we may find ourselves on the wrong side of the divide. It's just a caution. So I leave that one at that. And what else do I have to say? That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm obviously not representing government, but maybe I can already sort of kickstart the next round of questions. I would like to just for a brief moment actually take off the hat I'm normally wearing at HSF, but I've been privileged to become an honorary Nduna for the Mafri people in the Zambezi region. Regrettably, I can't, but maybe I'll have a different role here. I'm taking this one up quickly because they, asked me, or gave me this, bestowed this honor to me also to speak sometimes on their behalf. And one of the biggest challenges they face is obviously the sustainable use of natural resources, i.e., really the forests. As we know, Namibia has lost about a quarter of its forest cover over the past 30 years. And that is due to many reasons: deforestation, forest fires, and. But one of the things, it's about resource mobilization and also putting the money where it creates the most benefits in the long term. And one of the things I see lacking for Namibia in general is a comprehensive national forest inventory, which is a bit of like a stock take. A shop owner needs to know what he has in the shop. If he doesn't know it, he cannot supply his customers. And in the same vein, we cannot protect that resource. We cannot ensure a sustainable use of the resource if we don't have an inventory, a national inventory. Because that also then would allow us for Namibia to have a national forest management plan in place. That would then in turn also, with regards to climate change, provide an opportunity for carbon credits to enter the carbon credit market, and then also to create a local value chain for the people in the communities, in the villages, to stay there, to maintain their livelihoods, actually to improve their livelihoods through that. So one of the recommendations I would put forward, not in my professional capacity, but as somebody who feels strongly about the forests and the livelihoods of the local communities in rural areas, that would be a key component also to move forward and to make sure that on the one hand you mobilize that resource, but on the other hand protect it. You can then also start reforestation, afforestation programs, and it create jobs locally in rural communities and would allow for people to stay there. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Jessica Brown from Development Workshop. Thank you for this platform. I think it's very refreshing to have a platform like this where we can sit and have a discussion with cabinet ministers and be involved in feeding stories back directly to decision makers. I think it's very powerful, and I think if more ministers and more ministries did this, we would really see discussions advancing. So I want to really appreciate the time. But I do want to challenge one thing. So it's not exactly a question, but I really want to challenge this narrative of who these few people that are falling through the cracks. I have never seen Namibia so poor. I think at the moment we are a country of people falling through the cracks. 60% of the population are living in households with between $0 and $5,000 million per month. And we know our households have about 5 people per household. 60%. So it's not these stories that came from Karatura. These are not random, isolated stories. This is systematic, chronic hunger, desperate poverty in Namibia. So I echo this thing of please go out and see it. We've all seen in the news stories that the Parliamentary Standing Committee that's going to visit hospitals, and they're acting shocked and surprised about the state of the services in the regions. But people living in the regions are not shocked and surprised. This is their everyday reality. So I just want to really emphasize this. This platform is excellent, but please, let's change this narrative. Most Namibians are not doing well. And I think linked to this, one of the things that is such a chronic issue about cracks is the accountability within our systems. I think it's brilliant that so much money in Namibia goes towards education, but we know there's issues of accountability. It's good that we have a social welfare service system with grants for vulnerable people and all these other things, but so many issues, again, come up with accountability with the administration of these funds. So I think the combination of thinking pro-poor and having real accountability and not looking at these as isolated examples of slipping through the cracks. And I think if we have that shift in mindset, the money in the budget in Namibia will have a huge impact. And I really like what was said about being pro-business and creating an environment for private sector and all of that. What brilliant. But I think if we have that reminder, 60% of our population are extremely poor, and we need much more accountability within our government systems. I think we'll see a huge change in Namibia. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for this platform. I wanted to request that Comrade DG maybe facilitate or help us to facilitate sectoral dialogues also with the line ministries around the formulation of priorities and the budgeting process, because some of the issues we are raising here, if it's not raised, included in the priority issues by the line ministries, we might miss the boat. Secondly, I think I agree with Comrade Finance Minister that it's really a shame. For example, just one tiny example. 2018, President says situation in informal settlements is an humanitarian crisis. And then resolutions are taken at the second line conference. Comrade DG, Comrade Minister, till today, 5 years later, we are still finalizing a strategy for upgrading informal settlements. 5 years later. If we assemble 3 civil society and 2 government officials, maybe 1 academic, we can finalize that strategy in a month. Have consultations for 2 months and finalize. Why is it taking 5 years to finalize a strategy, a housing, revise a housing policy? So I'm not sure, you know, when the current administration took over, we were so encouraged because we was talking about performance and CVs and the president signed an agreement with the ministers with the GGs and so on. And we're looking forward to these people being held accountable. But we are so disappointed, especially the technocrats down the EDs. We sit on these technical committees, interministerial committees. We waste our time going there and making inputs. If you come 3 months later, we are at the same place. No movement. Second land conference resolution, Presidential Commission on Ancestral Land. No movement whatsoever. The next recommendation I wanted to make was the NAMRA CEO was making encouraging remarks about suspicions that fishing industry is not paying enough tax, that maybe some mines are not paying enough tax. And I'm wondering whether we must not boost his capacity. Can we not mobilize national and international tax experts around him so that he can investigate, especially illicit financial outflows? We understand there's a process going on where government is making these assessments and so on. Can we boost that capacity? Final point I want to make is that around universal health coverage, we were encouraged when government said we're going to have universal health coverage, and we thought that the public service medical aid scheme, the one of the Social Security Commission medical aid fee, what the government is putting in public resources, all that will be combined, and we will have like a combined kind of a solidarity fund using the 15 billion plus other resources to boost our health sector. But it seems as if these initiatives are still continuing in isolation, and there is not a unified effort to see how we can fund quality health care for all Namibians, whether they help, whether they work, contribute to a medical aid fund or not, but that we guarantee quality health care for them. I just want to conclude by saying that, as my neighbor here said, that, for example, if we look at the social protection policy, we were looking at who are the Namibians that are falling out, that are not covered. We worked for 5 years with Bishop Kameda, including in the same room, had workshops after workshops, and we we came back with some kind of a draft social protection policy that we felt was going to address the issue. When it came back from cabinet, it was a disappointment. Most of what we had agreed with Bishop Kamita was dropped. Universal health care, to start basic income grant, sort of with the ones that are excluded, or ones of maternity grant, I can go on and on. All those things were dropped, and that is causing people to fall through the cracks because there's no protection for them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my first question is, I think the Minister of Finance, the day when he was presenting the budget, he went to the parliament with young boys for the soccer players. Now I want to know the update of the Independence Stadium. When is the first national team going to play our games here in Namibia on the end of the break? And then my second question is, we see in Europe, the league, they are paying players and those soccer players that are getting rich. When in Namibia, are we going to upgrade our league so that the soccer players can get rich and we employ our young people there in the soccer so that they can generate income?
It's job creation.
Yeah, job creation. Okay, my last question is to the Minister of Finance. When is Namibia going to be the industrialized nation or industrialized economy? Thank you.
Okay, Honorable Minister, the government was put there to serve its people, but currently it's failing to serve its people. Yes, yes, most percentage in the budget goes allocates to education, yet according to statistics, children are the most people that suffer here in this country. What is going on and what's really wrong and why can't you accommodate? Because I believe that Namibia really has the resources to accommodate for everyone here. The fact that you are rejecting the basic income grant, I believe you have the money for it to provide for every single person that is in this country. And another thing is that, can we please have a journal or something that tells us exactly that what was the money used exactly for under the education sector or any different sector, so you maybe sit with other survey groups and so we know exactly what to do next time instead of money going out yet no progress is happening.
Hello, my name is Kuhepa Kangube. I am the spokesperson for the LPM Youth Command Element, and I've also been part of the BIG and also the Student Union of Namibia. Now, mine is not a question, it's more of a contribution, because first off, I would like to thank Ansido Foundation, because I have truly learned a lot from this foundation. I've truly learned a lot, and I would like to thank the Minister for his time, because I know how busy he is. And I think I found the problem and also the solution with what is actually going on, because ever since this budget discussion has come up, I've tried to look for solutions to what is actually going on. I've researched on business ecosystems and how we can improve our business ecosystems, and also how at every level of the business ecosystem some type of knowledge or funds is required. But then I have realized that also that...
Can I come to the question, please?
Okay. I've realized that the biggest thing that we need from the ministry is their time. Even though they are so busy, we need their time. Because without their time, all of these things that they are trying to do is falling apart. Because it seems like there are things that the ministry is doing. To be honest, I've done my research. There are a lot of things that the ministry is doing, trying to improve the country. But then, without their time, none of these things will actually ever happen. And I truly think that if there is some way that the ministry can actually delegate some of this task and focus on the Namibian people and what they need, and supplying what they need, jobs, whatever it is, I truly believe that the economy itself will be healthier. But then without their time, this is why there is corruption, this is why most of these projects are not succeeding. It's because they do not have enough time. They're always in the office, they can't go to these places that we're talking about, because they are always in the office working. And we need the ministry to be there and see what is going on and find solutions. That's what I have to say.
Thank you very much. My name is Frank Nebuga, representing from Namibia. Mine is not a question as such, but it's just a comment and try to make our minds think deeper. Namibia is well known to be one of the best countries in terms of planning. We have good documents of how we run our programs, but the biggest challenge we have is implementation. And when you look at this issue of implementation, it's the one that affects the programs on the ground. And the lack of implementation is because of there's a lack of coordination between government entities and SOEs. That coordination is completely very poor. And that coordination is lack of coordination is brought by lack of accountability. People do things, they know that whatever happens, there's no one who will call them for accountable of what they have, put in place or planned. So I think we need to look at who's supposed to take care of the accountability for all these organizations that have given mandate to make sure programs are implemented. And also which ministry, I don't know whether it's a National Planning Commission or a minister, also the Prime Minister, that's supposed to make sure that coordination is well coordinated. And if we do that, we'll be able to make and change the lives of Namibia. Thank you very much.
Well, very quickly on the oil and gas question. So we're probably about 7 years away from oil production happening, which doesn't benefit any of us at the moment, but it does give us time to develop better policies and amend the laws. And obviously the oil and gas conference is taking place tomorrow and the next day that Clemens mentioned is going to address some of these issues to try and make sure that we are in a better position to benefit from these resources. For our big concern in IPPR is corruption, that we don't follow the resource curse pattern that has affected so many countries. So, but the other thing I think that has been highlighted for me by this Namibia investment promotion and facilitation bill that was before a discussion, a consultation earlier in the week, and that was really not how to do a consultation, because they presented an old bill, they've admitted that they have changed the bill, but they didn't give it to the public. But from what I can work out, that would be a bill that would make life very difficult for the private sector in Namibia, whether it's local investors or foreign investors. And it might effectively block investment in Namibia if it goes through in the form that it is. And the reason why that's important is because we don't want to become an oil economy. We don't want to become dependent on oil because, as you pointed out, you pointed out that oil is we know it's a limited time period. We don't know how long this oil supplies will last, but also secondly, the global context. Everybody is urging countries to move away from fossil fuel dependence. We have net zero targets and so on. So, we're not going to be able to depend on oil and gas for very long, although it may benefit us for a few years to a great extent. So what we need to do is, at the same time as the oil and gas happens, maybe at the same time as green hydrogen happens, we need to have an economic diversification policy so that the economy doesn't just become solely dependent on these extractive industries. And there is other possibilities, other growth areas in the economy, because otherwise it will collapse. At some point the oil will run out, or the global environment in terms of fossil fuels will close off, and we will be stuck. So I think we have quite a few major challenges that we have to tackle, and local content is also important because that gives an opportunity to Namibians to get involved in oil and gas, but it also, if we look at other countries, is a big opportunity and a risk area for corruption. So that
education activities, but as we said earlier on, a significant part of that goes to the remuneration of teachers or the payment of salaries and things like that. But again, as I said earlier, we are one of those countries that are spending a great deal of resources on education. So the question we really have to ask ourselves, and the risk of repeating what I said earlier, is can we look at all those problems that we have in education? How do we redirect some of those resources? The question I was asking the Minister of Education, for instance, 33 years after independence, do we still have to spend the same amount of money on adult education? Or can we redirect that resource to some of the education programs that need resources? Material, that is not books, textbooks, ICT infrastructure. So maybe that's where we need to redirect those the kind of the resources that we are spending on that. Should we allow, for instance, NAMCOR to offer a master's degree? Yeah, because again, this is money that is being spent on education. NAMCOR was set up to help students who are improving their primary secondary qualifications. But they are offering all kinds of programs, including a master's degree now. They are not competing with universities. These are the questions that I want the researchers to really ask, because I think these questions will help us to tackle the real issues that we need to tackle. Because if the first step in solving the problem is really understanding the problem, and once you understand the problem, then you can address it. So I think young researchers, I want you to focus on these things and say, okay, these are the kind of problems that we have in education. Do we need all of this, or do we need to do away with some of them so that we can redirect the resources that we have currently in education? The gentleman wanted to ask about the stadium. Yes, I share the passion that we have on sports, because I believe a healthy nation, it's a nation that that is able to allow its young people to practice sports and all other activities, including the creative sector that Mr. Shekute has talked about. Yes, we have made some resources available like that for the upgrading of the stadium. Unfortunately, that did not happen, because you may recall that we wanted to co-host the African Cup of Nations in 2027, I believe. So FIFA had to come, not FIFA, but the AFCON had to come and do some audits. So the ministry couldn't proceed with the upgrading of the stadium, because that audit was outstanding. So I believe the audit is now done, and we have again made money available. I think in the current budget we have close to over 100 million, I think 160. It's around 100 for the upgrading of the stadium. So hopefully it will now be done. As I said, not every problem is a money problem. So we will have to encourage the ministry to fast track the process. But the money is available, so I think let's all support the ministry to ensure that is carried out, or the upgrade work is carried out, so that our girls and boys can practice at home. The industrialized economy, yes, we believe that's the way to go. No country has actually become richer without industrializing. So the kind of poverty that we're talking about is basically the fact that we don't have industries. So the DG has talked about the diversification strategy that we're trying to pursue, the new areas of growth that we are trying to nurture. That's all part of the diversification strategy, so that we can create more industries that can employ people, that can pay better salaries, and therefore that's really the key to, first of all, to industrialization, and secondly to improve and reduce poverty. Mr. Dempers, I fully agree with you. The speed of execution, it's something that we need to improve as government, and maybe as Namibia in general. We too slow to implement things. I think that's one of our challenges. The implementation of the housing policy, I believe this is something that has been a partnership between the ministry and I see Anna is there. She's one of the she's one of those who are working on this housing policy. So I'm happy that the team has now delivered. We actually discussing the housing policy last week in the cabinet committee, and hopefully once it's approved, we are going to speed up the implementation process. I am one of those who who believe that we should really invest more in creating more housing opportunities, so that we can help people with some basic amenities. So we need to fast track that process. I fully agree with you. Thank you for supporting NAMRA. Please continue to support NAMRA. We are supporting NAMRA in many ways. So when they are criticized, we must also want the civil society to stand up and say, yeah, those who are not paying tax must pay tax. Because we can only help you to redirect resources to the areas where you think resources need to be directed if we collect those resources from those who have paid tax. So let's support them. So at the moment they're getting a lot of support from ourselves and in other international communities. But in any other support, even moral support, and I think that's at least that you can give moral support is necessary. I've already talked about the Ministry of, as part of our priorities going forward. Health is definitely one of it. The universal health coverage is there. Is part of the program that the Ministry of Health has put in place, or has actually presented as a program that needs funding. So when we're looking at the funding of the Ministry of Health, it's also going to address that concern. I believe on the issue of accountability, we've already talked about it, and I think the debate is not really that whether there are Namibians that are poor. I think the issue is that government has created a social safety program. So I want to understand whether that safety net that government has, is it not enough in terms of the levels? I think that's where the discussion should take place. Because as I said, if we don't identify the problem, we can have general discussions which will not be helpful. We need to go to the root cause of the problem. Is the problem not comprehensive enough? In fact, I believe that government has too many problems that need to be coordinated. Yeah. So I think it might be it's a coordination problem. So that's what I want us to discuss. We are not oblivious to the fact that a lot of Namibians are not having enough. We also live in those communities, so we see the problems there. I go to Kalitra very often. So don't leave this room with the impression that you don't know what is happening in Kalitra. I get my hair cut, I was there on Saturday in Kalitra. So I interact with a lot of Kalitra people. So please, but I think what is important is really to understand that where are the problems not being effective? That way, I think we can start to solve them. I leave it there and I leave it to the DG.
Thank you. And for the last time, perhaps, I just want to fly a few comments. First, the Unsidle Foundation, I'm sure the comments made is meant for us as takeaways and pass it on to the line minister. Perhaps link the two of you if you don't already interact. That's my first comment. I believe the lady in front, her name is Jessica. I just didn't know or didn't get what organization you are from. Development workshop. Okay. I'm interested in getting in touch so we can review with the type of data we have and research methodologies so we can align your statistics to what we have. The government has done significant amount of work in the inequality sector, poverty, hunger, malnutrition, project development. So there is common interests, and we are eager to learn from how you do it and how you arrived at your figures. So, and perhaps we can pick up synergies with one another. From my friend, Mr. Dempes, your call was for NPC to facilitate sectoral dialogues. I'm sure with the hope to solve or allude to some of the comments you've made below thereafter your first comment. I shall await, of course, how you want that done, what the specifics of dialogue should be, and in what time frame. As for the fishing, that's not my business. Member collects tax dollars. Social protection policy, maybe we can give it as part of the sectoral dialogues and hear you out. And finally, of course, planning, although as an overall function is vested here, there are separate planning directive or directors in each of the ministry. In fact, the overall planning framework, in my attempt to understand how it's done, that motivated my going to regions and understand where it starts, how it's built up, how does it get to national government, and once that planning framework is complete for a particular national development plan, it gets to be reviewed on the progress made as you go into the next NDP, and at the individual sector level, it's not really being coordinated by the NPC too. This is how it broke down. So it is a challenge. We need to revise it back to that very level. And as you say, we polish up documents. You would be so attracted to them that you can gobble them all up, but they will not fill your tummy. So I want to, it's been said in government at our level each time in cabinet. So what the sticky point is, we remain to crack that. So I acknowledge that statement. Finally, I want to, my background studies is mineral resources, and for 18 years I worked in the oil and gas sector. So I wish to say, in my opinion, there is no contradiction in the just energy transition going forward. Even the biggest producers of oil and gas, and those have planned for a bad day once oil and gas run out, or peak oil is reached, as we say. These are lessons to avoid and avert resource gas. There are plenty such lessons. We are at a cusp, in my opinion, of our history to be responsible about it. We are one of the last major frontiers in the discovery of oil and gas resources. So the responsibility placed upon this government and many more to come, especially in the period 6 to 7 years before first one, places us to take responsibility to avoid any of what now seemingly becoming the word of preach in terms of how these resources cannot coexist. It is us to decide. Can they coexist or can they not? And can we put people in institutions of learning? Can we run to those that have the longest history to actually tell us, avoid this and the following? What I hate and wish not to see is for us to drop the beneficiation of what is otherwise God-given to us, so that we can deploy those very revenues to now go into the next green phase of job creation. I want us to look at the policy framework to take account of what others have avoided, where it got us into the cases of Nigeria, the cases of bad accidents in the world, current net zero and climate change. These are fundamentals that needs to give us the best we can pick and harvest to create a sustainable industry for the benefit of what currently is plaguing us as we speak. And that's why we're here. Thank you.